I studied history and philosophy in college, and during the course of my life, particularly since college, I've enthusiastically studied military history. And over the last couple of days, I was presented with some video footage of dead soldiers in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And these were not the type of videos that you normally see released where they're from a drone or at a distance. This was several hours of footage up close and personal taken by someone of dead soldiers, their bodies mangled, burned, dismembered beyond recognition. And I always thought, I've never been in the military, but have studied military history and military theory, as I said. But I've always thought, as Chris Hedges once said, that war ultimately is organized murder. And when you see these types of pictures, you come to realize that many people speak in war in abstract terms. And I'm reminded of the quote by General William T. Sherman, Union general during the Civil War, who said, "It is only those who have never heard a shot, never heard the shriek and groans of the wounded and lacerated. It is only those people who cry aloud for more blood, more vengeance, and more desolation." Even if you go back and look at Otto von Bismarck in Germany, he said, only the people who have never seen the glazed over eyes of a soldier dying on the battlefield call for more war. Even General Douglas MacArthur famously said, the soldier, and by that he always meant, and these people meant, the common soldier. The common soldier always prays for peace, because they are the ones who have to bear the deepest scars and wounds of war. And I always like to remind people in my discussions, when colleagues and I are talking about things, we're talking about human life. And every one of these soldiers who dies is somebody who had aspirations and dreams and family and wanted to do something surely besides being slaughtered on a battlefield. And going back to Chris Hedges' quote that war is organized murder, it's interesting to note that, of course, in society at large, murder is illegal. But when you're wearing the flag of a nation, you can commit murder without any care or concern, because you're doing it under the banner of the military of a particular nation that sends someone to war. But what I find even worse these days, particularly in the modern era, with regard to the people who command forces, whether they're elected officials or whether they're generals. My father always used to say, never trust anyone above the rank of colonel. What I always find disturbing is people who profit. Number one, of course, defense contractors. I don't blame the workers in the plants. I of course, mean the shareholders and the executives who profit off of war. But I also mean the elected officials and generals who profit off of war by writing their memoirs or stories about self-aggrandizing, as they were, about sending men into battle and sending forces to do this and forces to do that. Again, in a very abstract fashion, in the sense that, war is sanitized to the point where it's almost as if the way they talk that, well, no one's really dying. It's just equipment being blown up. And I would like to reference in that regard the use of language in terms of how, particularly in America, we lie with language. And I will paraphrase George Carlin, the famous philosopher comedian, who talked about this when he said, in the First World War, it was people who were affected by combat was referred to as shell shock. And so as we approached or went into World War II, of course, that same shell shock, in other words, was turned into the words combat fatigue. Sounds less violent. And in the modern era, we use, for the same terms, shell shock and combat fatigue, we use the terms post-traumatic stress disorder, as if it's, again, some sort of sanitized thing that can be readily taken care of or cured by some sort of magic wand or whatever. I think in general, people are far too willing, and I don't care what country you're from, I think it's just a general thing. People are far too willing to sacrifice the lives of everyday men and women. And these people who do this are our vainglorious leaders in pursuit of their imperial dreams. But lastly, with regard to profiting off war, I'm reminded of General Robert E. Lee, who I'm sure all of you know, who never wrote his memoirs, although he was tempted by money and et cetera, to write them, and profitably so. But eventually he said to the people, he said, no, I cannot write my memoirs because I cannot trade, or I should not be trading on the blood of my men. And what's missing, I think, in American society today and in large parts of the world is honor and integrity. And that is an unfortunate circumstance of the modern era.